And I think we're live. I think everyone can hear us anyway. So, good morning. Welcome to Thursday Thoughts. My name is Trish McFarland. I'm the president of the chamber, and we are thrilled to have Kristy and John with us today. As we all know, the days and the weeks are kind of blending together now. And as John was just saying, and I found a quote that I just wanted to start with today. When the crisis comes, we all pull together naturally. It's easy then. It's when things drag on too long that we have to make the effort. We need to make sure everyone sees we're all in this together. So this morning's presenters will help us do that and give us some strategies to work towards the future and staying in this together. So I'm going to turn it over to Jacqueline Miley, who's coordinated this event and put it all together and made it phenomenal. So Jacqueline, thank you.
Thank you to everyone who is here today, and thank you so much to Kristy and John for joining us. Just a few things before we do hand it over to Kristy. Just a few chamber updates. We do want everyone to know that the chamber is here for you while during the coronavirus outbreak. We do have a resource page going with a number of different business resources that we continue to update on a daily basis. So if you need anything, feel free to go to that page, which is right there, www.delcochamber.org/coronavirus. Also, we keep having a few different webinars. Next week, we will start off the week with Monday Motivation. So we'll be kicking this off and we'll be hosting a webinar every single Monday. Next week, we will have Jim Burkhead, who is the chair of our Veterans Committee, and also Mike Lynch, who is the vice chair of our Veterans Committee. They will be talking about their tips on how they got through combat and how they continue to stay motivated despite the circumstances that they were in. So I think that'll be a great way to start off your week. And then once we get into Tuesday, you'll learn, if you want to attend, to learn opportunities to get some virtual extra hands to help you with anything that you need during this coronavirus outbreak. Villanova has kicked off an amazing program to help the business community and link them with students who can help them with everything from market opportunities to business plan writing. So that will be on Tuesday. For any of our other upcoming events and to register for those two, go to www.delcochamber.org/events. We'll continue to push these events out, so stay tuned and keep an eye on that calendar. I will turn it over now to Kristy Purnell, who is a Prosci certified change management professional from Vanguard. She will continue to talk about change management and how you can apply that to your business. Thank you, Kristy.
Thanks, Jacqueline. I appreciate it. And I'm so excited to be here to talk about the thing that I love, which is also my day job. So not a lot of people get to do that, but I love change management. It's what I do on a regular basis for Vanguard. And it's one of the things that I think that doesn't just get applied to change in corporate America. It can also be applied to our lives and the things that we're experiencing as we speak. So I just wanted to start out with the next couple slides with some basic change management methodology just to get you guys familiar with some of the approaches. And you can go to the next slide, Jess. Just to get you familiar with a couple of the approaches that we take when we apply our methodology to any change, any initiative, any project. And so the approach is, as Jacqueline mentioned, I'm Prosci certified. Prosci is a company that is an expert in the change management industry and has training programs that can scale up and certify those that look to go into the change management industry. So I took I want to say like a 3 to 4 day course to get Prosci certified in change management. And so here I am today. But this is just one of the ways you can approach if there's a change in, any industry, any project, any size business. It could be a major corporation or a small organization. And these are just really how we look at the building blocks for a successful change. And so ADKAR, which is what you see there, and as you can see on the picture on the right, every letter means something. So with awareness, desire, knowledge, ability, and reinforcement, there's ways that we break it down and apply this approach to the things that we do and work on specific to change management and project management. So with awareness, you're starting with the why. You probably heard this before, nothing new, but it's really understanding the nature of the change or the thing going from current state to the new future state and why it's needed. It's really providing a lot of clarity around, you know, what that impact may look like. And then in order to get to desire, you want to check all the boxes in awareness. And the desire is really, okay, now that I have that understanding, it's, okay, I've decided to be a part of this change, you know, and that's really having an understanding of what's in it for me. So it's very important for leaders to not only start with why, but to make sure those that are, you know, they're the individual contributors, they're the other leader audience, but those that are a part of that impacted audience have an understanding of what's in it for me. That's how you know that they will begin to engage and participate in the change itself. And then after you've checked all the boxes in desire, you move on to knowledge. And that's really, you know, having the training, the upskilling necessary, and the tools and resources out there to say, I know how to do this change, or I know how to take part in this change. And then you go on to ability and reinforcement. And really the ability is I'm able to do the things, demonstrate the capability of the actual implemented change. We can then start celebrating some wins around what's changing. And then we're communicating that, you know, the performance or the behavior that we're, you know, experiencing as a part of being able to change. And then reinforcement is just, hey, we have gone through the success of implementing this change. We are now sustaining it. We are now providing programs and action plans to reinforce what we put in place. And then you recognize all of those that were experiencing the adoption of that change itself. So it's really taking, you know, this approach, and this is just really the basics of change management, and knowing that this can work for any industry, any size company. And if you think about it, you can also apply it to real life. So we're all experiencing some things as it relates to COVID-19, and this is just a way to like really have an understanding of what you can, you know, implement. There's also some links at the bottom of this slide, and that's just making sure that you have an understanding that there's a website for Prosci, prosci.com. Again, that's how I got certified, and a lot of the content from this, from these slides come from Prosci. There's also a really, really good TED Talk with Simon Sinek, who wrote the book Start With Why, but he also did a TED Talk. That TED Talk is so empowering, and so it's a mindset change for starting with why and having an understanding why that's so important. So we can go to the next slide. This is still the basics of change management methodology, but it's just another level to the approach. As we're applying the ADKAR model, which we saw in the slide before, we're looking at it from the lens of 3 phases. And that 3-phase approach is really looking at it from preparing for change, managing change, and reinforcing the change. And again, methodology, very basic, but this is just a process in which you take it to another level. So in phase 1, we're applying some of those ADKAR elements, you know, why the change, who's impacted and how, and making sure that we involve the necessary, you know, sponsors. But as we go to managing the change, it's really just implementing those plans, right? We have project plans, we have change management plans, communication plans, and then training and coaching. And it's really just making sure that you collaborate with the right teams in order to integrate the necessary activities. And then of course, we talked about reinforcing already, and that's a whole nother phase as we're transitioning back to BAU and making sure that we celebrate success, measure performance, and then identify if there's any, I want to say those that are impacted in that impacted audience, we may have some resistors. And so you do want to make sure that you identify who those resistors to that change is, so that you can work on putting together some planning and programming around that. Again, this can be applied to any industry, any type of company. It can certainly be applied to what we're experiencing now with COVID-19. So just think about it that way. Take a step back and just think about it that way. You can go to the next slide. So I thought this was a really good picture of what we may all be experiencing today. So for one, for a change to be successful, the people must do their jobs differently. It's not the company, it's not the business, it's not, you know, the aspect or the vision or none of that is really changing as much as it's the people. So if we take everything out of it and just have an understanding that change involves people, and in order to have successful change, it involves people doing their jobs different, right? So how many of us on this call today has experienced anything on this page? I mean, we all have some real, you know, relation to something on this page. So if you're looking at the left side of the page, there's like a new strategy that could be implemented, updated IT systems, you know, a new marketing approach. You're focusing on a different type of customer. I'm pretty sure that some of us on this call has experienced some of what you see on the left-hand side, but there's one blaring item that we're all experiencing right now, and that's of course COVID-19, right? And so when we think about it, we have to think about what is it that we need to do to make sure that what we're experiencing in this current state, as we come out of this current state to move on to the future state, how can we be successful? And that's really all about how you change as an individual. And so if you look at the picture on the right where the guy's holding tight onto the tree, right? That's a lot of us. We don't want to change. Sometimes change is just painful. You know, it's something that you just don't feel like doing. You're so accustomed and used to doing, you know, things your normal way. Well, again, in order to be successful, you as an individual have to change yourself. You have to do your job different. No matter what we're experiencing negatively, no matter how hard the impacts are, it's really about changing as an individual. So I hope that kind of really painted a picture of why change management is important, and some of the things that we experience together, because as Trish said in the beginning, we're all in this together. You can move on to the next slide. So this is just some best practices that as a change management professional, this is like my Rolodex, almost like my black book that I have in my back pocket that I always, you know, implement. I can't go anywhere without doing the things on this slide. And it's really the best practices to make sure leaders are doing what they're supposed to do and making sure that it's a positive, as positive as we can make it, experience for those that are impacted in whatever that change is. And so leaders have to have that shift in their mindset. It's extremely important to understand that in order to lead properly, you have to have that leader mindset. And it's not about managing the work. It's not about delegating the work. It's not about managing the change, because you may have people to do that for you. It's about being a leader and leading the change. It's about making sure that you're setting the tone for those that are under you, who are watching you and taking on the same persona that you may be taking on. Shift that culture, set the tone properly, and have that leading mindset, that leader mindset, because if leaders behave differently, guess what will happen? It's contagious. Everyone else will continue to follow suit. So it's really, you know, easy to complain. It's easy to, you know, just want to look at the work, but you got to come out of the work and make sure that you're leading by doing as well. And so it's important for leaders to not only have that mindset shift, but they should also be extremely engaged in the process. One of the things that I experienced at the company that I work for is sometimes leaders are so busy, they don't want to be engaged. They think that they can hand it off to someone else. It's okay to give it to this team. We really need to make it a point to put a stake in the ground to say, leaders, you have to be engaged. You have to be a part of the process. You have to foster the environment of building that rapport with those that are impacted. That's how they know that you care, and that makes a difference. So it's increasing the confidence, it's leading to empower, it's developing the teams as you go along. And at the end of the day, it's, you know, we rise by lifting others. That's one of my favorite quotes, and I live by it, and I implement it in all of my change management practices. And it's really starting at the top and making sure we lift from, you know, so that those that are under us can come up with us. So connect on a personal level, connect on a professional level, but make sure you're being vulnerable, relatable, and you're telling a story about yourself, you're experiencing, and the change that we're all going through at the same time. You can go to the next slide, Jeff. And this is one of the slides I wanted to really close out with, because I thought that it's really, we're all in this crisis. We're all responding to this crisis. We're all trying to, depending on what your position is, lead through this crisis. You may have coworkers, you may have a team that you're still trying to lead. You may be experiencing loss of business, but you still have those that were working for you. I'm not sure what that looks like for every person, but we do want to make sure that we're demonstrating confidence as much as we possibly can, right? We want to have that creativity, making sure that, there's clarity and honesty in talking to your coworkers and your team members, making sure that, hey, we're working we were used to working this way in the office or however, prior to COVID-19, but now let's, put those old ways to the side and be a little bit more creative. Take some suggestions to those that may know technology a little bit more. Do something different. We all have different coworkers now, right? So we have spouses, pets, children. We may even have to become teachers where we didn't think we would ever teach, right? So it's just making sure that we, tap into that emotional intelligence, making sure that, as a leader, you're engaged, you're talking through all of these things with your team so that they have an understanding that you are just as relatable as they are, and you can empathize and support them in the right manner. And at the end of the day, I saw that picture on the right-hand side on social media the other day, and I thought it was just so on point for this slide deck, because positivity kills fear. And the more positive you can be, the less fearful you'll be. And I know that leaders, we put a lot of emphasis on what they should be doing. We all, even if you're not a leader, should be as positive as possible, as hard as it may sound. But being positive in a negative situation, so let's put COVID-19 in parentheses next to that, it's not naive. It's not, not knowing what to do. It's leadership. And true leadership requires being positive and having that, energy that can rub off on someone else. So it's good vibes, right? And we want good vibes only. And again, this is really how you can implement change management now in how we're all experiencing this COVID-19. So I'll stop there. The next slide, I believe, starts with John. But I just want to make sure everyone had an understanding of some of the true basic methodology of change management, how it looks like on a regular basis in corporate America, but how you can take some of those pieces and some of those building blocks and add it to what we're going through right now.
Thank you so much, Kristy. Before we move on to John, I think you may have addressed this, but just to approach this question one more time, make sure that we get everyone's questions answered. We have one question for you. Do you have any techniques you have found in the past that worked when dealing with resistance during a time of change?
Can you say the first part of that again, Jacqueline? I'm sorry.
Oh, no. Do you have any techniques you have found in the past that worked when dealing with resistance during a time of change?
Yes. So there's a couple different things that I have implemented in one of the most recent programs and transformations at Vanguard, and it's been so successful. I created a change network, and that's taking those positive influencers in a leader bucket and the positive influencers in the non-leader bucket, and making sure that they are the tools and the resources when a change is happening. So, and this was a major transformation that was going on that was impactful to over 6,000 employees. And so we have that change network to be our advocates of change, our influencers, our feedback loop. And so they will be the ones that will meet with the project and change team on a regular basis to be upskilled on the proper, details, the updates, the things that are going on behind the scenes, so that they can go out and start influencing and advocating for that change. They'll help identify those resistors, and then we'll continue to work on programming and planning specific to the resistors to the change, so that we can shift their mindset and eventually shift their behavior as well. Was that helpful?
I think that it was perfect. Thank you so much. I think that is definitely something that everyone can use right now. I think that was absolutely amazing. So thank you so much for joining us. I do just want to encourage everyone that is on the webinar to utilize the question and answer section that's found on the bottom of the screen. If you have any questions during the webinar, feel free to type it in there and we'll try to get to it by the end of the webinar. If not, then we'll make sure that it is addressed or answered for you afterwards. So thank you so much. And now we'll move on to John Tooher, who is the CEO of HeadRoom and Media. Thank you so much, John.
Thanks, Jacqueline. And hi, everyone. And thanks, Delco Chamber, for setting this up and being a great resource for all the businesses in the area at this time. It's really important for all of us. Okay, so I am a small business owner, and I think a lot of the members of the chamber are as well. And what I'm about to talk to is really as much advice to myself as it might be to you, listeners. And really my point being, can I go to the next slide, Jacqueline? I think the one after this. Yeah, as Kristy was saying, change involves people. And as business leaders, we have to look at ourselves and decide, what are we going to do differently going forward? The way I look at this moment in time, you know, it is a crisis and it is dire, but it's also an opportunity. And the reason why it's an opportunity is because you can, at this time, perhaps take the time to stand back and look at your business and maybe see it in a different light. The bottom line is your competitors are in the same boat as you. And the question is, you know, which of you is going to respond better to the challenge? Can you develop a better plan than your competitor at this time? Can you be more ready than they are when things start to get back to normal or dealing with the new normal? So, you know, what I would advise you to do is sort of try and stand back, even talk to friends, talk to colleagues and say, hey, help me re-examine my whole business and how I do things and how I've done things in the past. And I think Kristy talked to the point about a lot of us get stuck in the weeds in our business and we sort of manage it rather than lead the business. We're so involved in the detail, we can't see it from the outside. And I think this is the time for you to stand back and look at your business and ask some fundamental questions. I like these 5 questions because really they answer the fundamental reason why you do what you do. And sometimes when you answer these questions, you actually get answers that you don't expect. And they are, who are you? You know, what makes you the person or the business to do what you do? What is it you actually do? If you were to really boil it down to the fundamentals of what you do, like a plumber fixes pipes, let's say, what is it you actually do rather than how you do it? And then the next thing is, who do you do it for? Who is your customer? And often when I work with companies, I'm surprised that through the process of looking at this, we realize that the customer isn't necessarily the person or the entity that they thought it was. So ask yourself that fundamental question. And then ask yourself, what is your style? What differentiates you from your competitors? Often we mix up what we do with what our style is. So you could be a person that fixes pipes, but what differentiates you from the other guy? Is it your 24/7 service? Is it your dedication to quality? Is it your 100% guarantee? What are the things that differentiate you from other people? And what's the end result? You know, how would a customer know that you've delivered on your promise? And I would just encourage you to ask yourself those 5 questions about your business now that you've got the time maybe to do it. Worst case scenario, it will probably generate a lot of content you can use in your collateral, your sales material, your marketing, your elevator speech. But essentially what potential customers want to know are the answers to those questions. And then the next thing to think about is, how well have you been measuring what you've been doing in the past? do you have, what we call key performance indicators, or things that you measure to know how you're doing? And if you don't, ask yourself, what could they be? And maybe start to set in place ways of measuring those things so that you know where you stand in the future. Next slide, please, Jacqueline. Again, and I'm focusing on business leaders and owners of companies in a way. And sometimes we've got to ask ourselves, why do we do what we do? I mean, what's the driving force? And what's going to make us happy now and in the future? And a friend of mine, Taka Agawa, reintroduced me to this principle of IKIGAI, which is kind of a weird name. It's a Japanese philosophy. And again, it's about trying to find a way to center yourself and be at peace with yourself in a way, as a business person, as a leader. And it asks fundamental questions of, what do you love? What gets you going in the morning? Is it the respect of others? Is it the appreciation of your employees or your clients? Is it, just the kind of feedback you get from people and the opportunity to engage with people? What drives you as a person? Then ask yourself, what are you good at? What do you do better than anybody else? And again, these are fundamental questions that we don't often ask ourselves. So again, I encourage you to ask yourself that. And then, what do you get paid for? What do people pay you for? What's the problem you solve? And does the world need it? And you can see, and I'm going to go into this in another presentation I'm doing next week, but you can see the intersection of all those things are what you're passionate about, what your profession is, what your vocation is, and what your mission is. And the idea is that you should be asking yourself all the time, am I centering myself in the middle of that thing? Am I doing something I love? Am I good at it? Do I get paid for it, sufficiently to make it worth my while? And, does the world, or basically the market, need what I'm doing? Okay, next slide, please, Jacqueline. So, the fundamental thing that sometimes we forget is, if we don't know where we're going, we're never going to get there. And a lot of us, myself included, often come in every day and do what I was doing last week, and I'm not really thinking about where I'm trying to get to. And I think it's so important for businesses, or for anybody trying to achieve anything, to set out a vision of where they're trying to get to and know it well. So if you don't have a vision for where you want to be 6 months from now, and let's face it, it's going to be hard to know that, but if you don't have a vision, you're just going to blow with the wind. So you're better off having some idea of where you're trying to get to. When you have defined that, create a plan to get you there. You've got to have a plan. You've got to have the road steps that are going to get you from where you stand today to where you want to get to. And these could be how, what are the key drivers? What are the things that you're going to have to deal with? They could be obstacles you have to overcome, but they could be also opportunities that can be seized. So you've got to identify what they are and take those, the key ones, the ones that are going to be most impactful and the ones that are going to most likely help you get to where you want to get to. And then you have to create a plan to address those things. Everything else is secondary to addressing those things. And part of that is really understanding what's the difference between something that's important and something that's urgent. And one of the ways I describe or try to help people with that is, if you're working on your new website, and that website's going to allow you to do a much better job of getting your message across and attracting customers to your business, and the phone rings with one client, what do? Do you answer the phone, or do you keep working on your website? My suggestion is you keep working on the website, because that's going to address hundreds of people and hopefully bring hundreds of more people to your business, rather than answering that one phone call with one customer who's looking for attention. And I know it's hard to do that, but what ends up happening is, if you keep answering the phone, you never get around to working on the important stuff. And, once you've developed that plan, once you know where you're going to be in 6 months from now, tell people that's where you're going. tell them your new story. You've got a strategy, convert that strategy into a story about where you're going and why it's important that your business is going there and what it means to your customers. Next slide, Jacqueline. So change your habits. Again, I have to ask myself every day, every week, am I falling back into my old habits or am I sticking to my plan? So, you know, a lot of us come into work on a Monday, open up our computer, go to our email, and that controls our day for the rest of the day and actually for the rest of the week. And we get bad at setting aside time to work on our business rather than in it. My tip to you is don't look at your email until noon. Make the morning about you working on your business and address the email in the afternoon. Just a tip. Control and manage your time. Your time is precious. There's nothing more precious than your time. And if you're letting everybody else control it, you're not in control of your life or your business. And to Kristy's point earlier, try as much as you can not to get involved in the managing of your business if you can help it. If you're a solopreneur, it's hard to kind of get away from that. But if you can lead the business forward and let everybody follow you rather than doing their work for you, for them, you're going to be in a you're bringing more value to your business. Measure progress. So make sure that you have ways to know how well you're doing. A lot of businesses I work with don't do a good job in this area. And as a result, they don't really know where they stand. Are they getting better? Are they getting worse? And it's great to look at your bank account and see how much money is in there, but that's not a really good way to know how well you're doing. Know your customer better. How well do you know your customer? What's the average revenue you're making from a customer through the lifetime of your relationship? How valuable is that customer to you, and how much time does that mean you can devote to that customer? Question to ask yourself. And then make your resources work for you. You know, if you've got a website, if you've got a marketing company helping you, if you've got a CPA or a bookkeeper, think about how you can use them better to help you get your job done. Next slide, please, Jacqueline. And last one. So, you know, let's remember, we are experts in our field. We actually know our stuff. And sometimes we doubt that, but the reality is you know your stuff, you know your market, you know your product, your service, and you know the customer. And you are the master of your destiny. You are the person who can make the difference, and you can lead you and your business forward. So don't underestimate your abilities. I think that was something Kristy talked to. You are able, you have the ability to get yourself out of this better than anybody else can. Don't bog yourself down in the detail. If you bog yourself down in the detail, you can't lead the response. And then again, think about being the person you always wanted to be. Go into this new normal with a different mindset and a different modus operandi. You can take this as an opportunity. Change is always an opportunity to change yourself. Stress, outside influences, they're opportunities for you to change. And, you know, also, I think I've found myself realizing there's more to life than work throughout this experience. So make sure there's a place in the future for you to enjoy your life more and think about centering yourself in those 4 bubbles better. And last but not least, stay calm, think clearly, think about the long term, and we're all going to get through this in the end. Thank you. I think that's it, Jacqueline.
Thank you so much, John. We really appreciate it. Thank you to Kristy. I do just want to say, if anyone has any questions, please use this time to put this into the Q&A. And if you do have any questions that you think of afterwards, feel free to email them to me, and then we'll make sure that they get answered and they get addressed, because we know sometimes when you get off of these webinars, some of those questions pop into your head and you're like, I wish I would have thought about that when I was on here. But just to kind of wrap things up, Kristy, do you have any final thoughts or suggestions for any of the attendees that are on today for how they can implement some of the suggestions that you had?
Yeah, so, and thank you for that. And the other thing I wanted to do is say the question that came in, it was a great question. So thank you for that question. I think we all experience where we need to learn how to implement different techniques at different times, especially when they're, resistors to change. And so I wanted to just say thank you for that question. Just moving forward, it's really just about the mindset shift, making sure that's important. One of the things that we implemented from a team perspective for my team, while we are all still doing our staff meetings and still doing our one-on-ones and business as usual, we took a step back and said we want to just share and connect on a personal level. So I challenge those on the call that are working, have coworkers and friends that they're working with, and their bosses. You can suggest this to your leaders. Connect once a week and just call it a coffee, virtual. We have Zoom, we have all this technology that we can leverage, and just start to connect with those that you're typically working with only on business stuff, and talk about and share experiences from a personal and professional level. When I say professional, I mean that in a way that, what are some of your goals? What are you looking to accomplish, during this time frame to grow and develop? So that would be my last thoughts, and hope you guys enjoyed the methodology. The websites are there, and if there are any questions, feel free to send me even after the call.
Perfect. Just before we have John wrap up his final thoughts on the presentation, we do have one person who raised their hand, Vince Gordon. So I will allow him to talk and ask his question. Just give me 1 minute. Vince, are you there? Well, I think he's muted.
I am, but I accidentally raised my hand. Sorry.
Not a problem. It's nice to hear from you anyways. John, do you have any final thoughts before we wrap up the webinar?
Just again to say, try and develop a sort of desired future state. Where would you like to be? Where would you like your business to be, let's say, by the end of the year, spring? And try and get the sense of what does that smell like, look like, feel like, and get it embossed in your mind, and then develop a plan of how you're going to get there. Don't go back into the new normal waiting to see what happens. You can influence what happens if you have a good plan. That's really the summation of what I'm trying to say.
Thank you, John.
I'm happy to talk to anybody who's on the call if they want to discuss it further.
Oh, thank you. Well, we actually have one question for you. It is from Josh Irons. He said, John, it's such a challenge to not answer emails right now. It's almost instinctual. How can I overcome that fear?
Yeah, and it is hard, but think about it. If somebody really is in trouble and needs your help, they're going to call you, right? First of all. Secondly, we've kind of become addicted to emailing and getting a fast response. But at the end of the day, you're always happy if someone's answered you at some point later in the day. If it goes to the second day, you're sort of wondering, maybe I don't really matter to that person. But I honestly think often by the time you get around to doing your emails, things have moved on anyway. All you're doing is encouraging people you're answering them, they're answering you. You're keeping them busy. In a way, you're doing onto them what's been done onto you. And we're all getting sucked into it. So I would just say, think about it this way. You're probably doing that person a favor by not answering that email straight away, because they're just going to respond to you and it's going to go back and forth and you're wasting their time as much as yours. Once people get used to the idea that you will answer, then they are not so worried if you haven't answered 5 seconds after being sent an email. So see it as doing the other person a favor rather than yourself, and you'll be fine.
Thank you. We do have one person that is raising their hand. Jared Littleton, and I'm going to allow him to join now. Give us just 1 minute. Jared, are you there?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, my question is for John. So I really appreciated what you said about setting that time frame and trying to figure out where you want to be, 6 months, 12 months, or whatever. But the biggest problem that I have is trying to figure out what that time frame should be and when I should get there for wherever I am. Now I'm a startup business. I just started my business in February, and my question is, how do you come up with that time frame? That's that impactful time frame. Should it be 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, 24 months? You know, and
Yeah.
you know, what's the important parts of coming up with that time frame, and or is it important at all, or should I just come up with it randomly and then just start going?
Jared, I typically advise startups to take a 6-month view of things because you're in a hurry to start making money, right?
Yep.
But you're also got a lot to do. And, you know, there's only so much you can get done in 6 months. But if you could get a lot done in that 6 months and be in a place where you're making money, you're doing pretty well, right? So looking out a year, 2 years, I typically would do that with businesses that are established because the kind of change they're trying to make is significant and they've got a lot of baggage that they've got to handle. You're light and you're nimble and you don't have so much baggage to carry. So I would say 6 months is a good, you know, a good figure because it could be it could be 4 months, it could be 8 months, but I think 6 months is good.
Awesome. Thank you.
And just settle with that because having a plan to get where you want to be in 6 months is better than having no plan whatsoever.
Thank you. That makes perfect sense.
Sure.
Thank you so much, Jared, and thank you, John. We do have another question in the question and answer portion. Bruce Kirk asks, are there processes/thoughts about evaluating the degree of change that's realistic to avoid changing too much or too fast? Are there benchmarks to use/assess?
I'll jump in and answer that. For one, that's a great question, Bruce. So thank you for asking that. 2, change fatigue is real. So if you think about major corporations, organizations, everyone has a project that they're trying to accomplish or, you know, get through. Projects overlap as far as time. Sometimes it overlaps as far as impacted audience. So yeah, there are times where there is too much change going on too fast at the same time, and how is it realistically avoided? Some of the things that I've experienced at the company that I work for now is creating, and this is from a divisional perspective, because I work for a division that has 6,000 plus employees. And so we look at it from every area in that division, and we created what we called a heat map of the changes that were going on at the same time across the different time periods, impacted audiences, you know, how big was the change, what was the scope and scale of the change. And so that was really our benchmark to assess where the change fatigue would lie. So we broke it out at high, medium, low, of course, very simple and basic. And anything in that red area, we would know that, okay, something is off. There's going to be so much going on with these impacted individuals at the same time through these separate initiatives. So we had to prioritize. And so our thought process through that is to maintain, you know, prioritization and figure out what benefits were coming out of each initiative that needed to occur now. Now, if you ask any leader, their change is most important, right? But you do have to be as realistic as possible, as possible, so that the adoption to the change is successful. And so we just looked at it from a heat map perspective, and that's just one way of measuring. You have other ways of measuring that as well, which are different surveys that you can implement to get actual feedback from those that are impacted. And then you really just prioritize and figure out what's best to do now. And at times it's everything. Sometimes it is, we have to do everything at the same time. And so when it comes to those situations, you have to really take into consideration the impacted audience, do what you can to make it a positive environment and a positive experience, and continue to recognize those that are doing the work as well as those that are being impacted but adopting the new change. So that's just one, a couple ways of doing it. There's different websites that you can go to if you want to read a couple more articles on some additional examples. And Prosci.com is a perfect website for you to dive deeper into additional tools and resources if you want to. Hopefully that was helpful.
Sorry, I was on mute. Thank you so much. I think that was so great. I believe that we got to all of the questions. But like I said, if anyone does have any questions after this webinar, please send them over to me, and we will make sure that gets answered for you. We'll make sure that all of the resources that were on the webinar that were listed, we'll make sure that's sent out to everyone as well. Like I said, next week we have a few different events coming up, so make sure you keep an eye out on www.delcochamber.org/events. Thank you so much to John and Kristy for joining us today. We really appreciate it. The topic of change and leadership right now is so timely in this time of crisis that we find ourselves in, but like you said, this can be an opportunity for the business community to take that turn and make a positive impact. So thank you so much. Thank you to everyone for joining today. And like I said, I'll send over that follow-up email.
Thanks, Jacqueline. Thanks
Jacqueline.
everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.